Visita. Anua.
And also mention the name Safari Osman. He's the captain of Malaysia Rugby.
Is here.
Yeah, he's here. Safari Osman.
Sag.
Safari Osman of Malaysian Rugby. Malaysia Rugby.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to commence in the next few seconds. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I introduce myself, and at the same time, I'd like to do some house rules. I'm Sharif Abbas, and I've been asked by Sadiq Krombi and the organizing committee of this book launch to be your master of ceremonies. I was pondering on the invitation, and I thought maybe because I have played top flight rugby representing 3 different provinces, or perhaps because of my pedigree. I come from a family of rugby players, and my father was the president of SARU for 17 years and secretary for the previous 17 years. I just want you to know that A.R. Abbas, my father, contributed majorly to the establishment of SARU as a non-racial union. And that we all know happened in 1966. And while I was pondering on the invitation, and I thought for a second, it was a late invitation. Did they come to me because they couldn't get somebody else? Or because they really wanted me as a choice? Nonetheless, I'm extremely honored to be part of this commendable book launch today. Let me get to the house rules. The first house rule is to place your phone on silent. If you still have your phone in your hand and it's not on silent, do that for us. When our legends come onto the stage, I think applause will be mandatory. So give them the round of applause when it's needed. Use the washrooms with discretion. Please don't disrupt the proceedings. And for the legends, when we call you up, move swiftly when we call you onto the stage. We'll do the posthumous legends first, and they'll be represented by their families. And then thereafter, the Saru icons will be second for all of those that are present. The program is going to be very compact. So we're going to stick to the allotted time schedules, and we're going to finish on time. We anticipate concluding exactly at 6 o'clock. Thereafter, stay and socialize. And of course, snacks will be provided at the closure. I now would like to commence with a universal opening prayer. And we gather here today, people from diverse backgrounds and faiths, united by our passion for rugby and our commitment to excellence. But we gather especially to recognize our Saru rugby legends with their rich traditions and proud history in the South African sporting landscape. We pray and acknowledge the efforts and the wisdom of our former rugby leaders and administrators who strongly advocated the principle of non-racialism, inclusivity, and justice. May their yeoman efforts be rewarded from above. We are cognizant of the strengths of our diversity and the beauty of our respective cultures in our land, South Africa. May our minds be open, our hearts be kind, and our spirits be inspired towards fairness and justice always. May our shared values of respect, teamwork, and fair play guide us. And may we strive to greatness, not just in our sports, but in our lives as well. May we be blessed with courage, perseverance, and joy. And may our time together today be a celebration of our shared humanity and our love for rugby. May it be so. I stand in awe here today. And as I was looking at the crowd today, I saw Sas Bailey, Gary Boshoff, Randy Marinus came to me just now, telling me that we played in the top 8 against one another and it was bieke mekaar geslaan. Peter Lawrence, Kasim Jabbar sitting in front. I was just talking to Ibrahim Karelse, he's here too. Rushdi Majid, Said Majid, Eddie Geduld. He was my teacher in Standard 7 for maths. Lloyd Lowe. Cubido came to me just now. He was the last Saru coach, if you can remember. Then I also want to acknowledge Sagri Osman. He's the captain of the Malaysian rugby team who is present here today. Sagri, just show us where you are. Okay. And then, of course, my dear friend, Dr. Umar Iso, who's written the book Scrummaging Against All Odds, and my other friend, Anwar van der Skyf. Respected and honored guests, the author of this beautiful and his beautiful and supportive family, the author, Sadiq Krombi, the iconic Saru legends of the game of rugby, the family of the past and present legends, ladies and gentlemen. While we revere those that are present, we lament with the same reverence those that have passed on. I implore you all to stand and offer our great past administrators, referees, and players a private prayer in a moment of silence for their contribution and sacrifices for a just sporting dispensation in our country. I would like you all to stand. And please offer a prayer to our forebears in rugby for at least 1 minute. Thank you. You may sit. Ladies and gentlemen, icons of the game of rugby, there's no doubt that this is an iconic moment. We have long stopped begging for recognition, and we do not come cap in hand any longer. Today, we assemble among legends of the game of rugby to claim and act confidently about our sporting prowess and our rich rugby history that goes back to the 1800s. And we do it with dignity. This grand and rich sporting history that I allude to was subsumed and erased by the colonial and apartheid era. When you read Danny Adams' story on how he was taunted, how he was vilified and beaten by racists due to his love for the game. This is the same Danny Adams who Yusuf Tut Davids, who's sitting over here, regards as one of the greatest centers or wings that he has witnessed on the playing field. Is Cheslin Colby perhaps not the Danny Adams of the modern era? Is Grant Williams perhaps not the modern day Kasim Jabbar? And I could say the same thing for Sia Kolusi and Themba Ludwaba. We had talent then, and we have the same talent now. We don't have to justify our talent, and never shall we do it again in the future. Now, I do understand, and my dear friend in his book, Scrummaging Against All Odds, talks about the subaltern, uh, you know, uh, s- uh, academic studies. And in the subaltern academic study, it is all about subaltern means previously marginalized people. And I regard the books that has been written, such as Mani Bully's book and other books, as treatises to rectify the narratives. And he writes very eloquently in his book. However, I have a different theory which I'll explore a little bit later. We now have a plethora of books which I regard as part of these studies, which aims to bring about a narrative change within the South African rugby community. Books such as Line Breakers by Ashwin Desai and Ashwell Adrian, Rugby, Resistance and Politics by Bantu Siwisa, Saru Indigenous by Harold Wilson, and I mentioned Forgotten Heroes by Mani Bully. And of course, again, Scrummaging Against All Odds by Umar Iso. And now, we've got a book by Sadiq Krombi, South African Rugby, Untold Stories from a Divided Nation. Now, I said I was going to talk about the subaltern studies that have been done, and I believe that the subaltern studies that is done is to correct the narrative that presently exists, maybe in rugby circles. But depending on where you are on this dialectic between believing that we don't need to justify who we are and we don't need to justify our talent, and those people on the left who feels that we still have a long way to go. In that dialectic, in that continuum, depending on where you're located, that is what we should be doing. And I've got absolutely no problem if there has to be further studies and further books written for us to correct the narrative. But there are others on this side of the continuum that believes that instead of writing books now, We fully understand where we're placed, and we should act in all our structures in such a way that we claim our right, that we claim our history, and that we claim our rugby tradition. And that is what we should be doing. And I'm not going to hog the discussion about the players and what the stories they have told. That I'm going to leave to our keynote speaker, Gary Bossoff, and I'm going to leave that to our dear author, Sadiq Krombi. I immediately want to turn to our guest speaker, and everybody knows him. He just reminded me when he was doing his practice teaching for his methodology of geography. He had visited Cathkin High, and I was his supervising teacher, Gary, you remember? But nonetheless, Gary Barney Eric Bossoff, grew up in Boland town of Caledon and studied at the University of the Western Cape, where he completed a master's degree in development studies, majoring in geography and psychology. He later attended Worcester State University and Leicester University on international scholarships. He went on to lecture at the Institute of Social Development at UWC and spoke at various international sport conferences in Europe, United States, and South Africa. These included conferences on sports management and sports sociology primarily. He then took up a position as Chief Executive Officer of the Blue Bulls in 1999. In 2006, he was appointed CEO of the Comrades Marathon Association, where he was instrumental in transforming the Comrades Marathon from an amateur event to a professionally managed, sustainable commercial enterprise. He was then elected onto the executive board of the Association of International Marathons and Distance Races at its 19th World Congress in Prague, Czech Republic in 2013. I understand that you were re-elected for a second term. In April 2019, he graduated with an MBA from Regenesis Business School in Sandton. He presently works in local government as Director, Community and Protection Services of the Stellenbosch Municipality. But on a sporting level, many of you won't believe this. You will not believe that Gary Bossoff's main sport was cricket until grade 11. Not if you had seen him play. Of course, the game came to him naturally when he got to the University of the Western Cape, focused on the game, and walked into the UWC team, represented Tygerberg 66 times. The Tygerberg Rugby Football Union 66 times, and of course, went on to Boland and represented them 22 times, and was capped for SARU in 1984, 1985, 86, and 87. Guys, give him a round of applause. He's a SARU legend. He's a SARU legend of note. And he's also our keynote speaker. Gary, the podium is yours.
Mr. Program Director, Mr. Sadiq Krombi, esteemed SARU legends, former national representatives of the non-racial South African Rugby Union, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I have to warn you up front. The program director said we have to stick to time limits. But I have to warn you, I'm going to steal some time from the next item on the program, because when Mr. Crombie gave me the time limit, I immediately said to him, that's too little time for such an important little talk that we want to do. And especially you feel the pressure amongst all these highly esteemed rugby players that are here today, cricketers, rugby players, and some of the gentlemen that I've shook the hands with, it gave me goosebumps. So please bear with me if I overstep the time limit. It is for me a singular honor and an exceptional privilege to stand before you today. And I've given the reasons for that already. Thank you to Sadiq and company for making me part of this occasion. The official launch of this very important book, South African Rugby, Untold Stories from a Divided Nation. When I was at university, and one of my subjects was Afrikaans, but one of the sections that I didn't like was poetry and literature. And what the lecturers usually will tell us is that the author implies a lot of hidden meanings in the prose and the rhyme that is embedded in those poems and in the literature. Sometimes I wondered at university whether the authors knew what they meant when they wrote the pieces, because what the lecturers came up with of what these things meant was sometimes very strange to me. In this case, I must say, Sadiq knew exactly what he was doing with the title of this book, South African Rugby. And I think if we read between the lines, Mr. Abbas, the program director, alluded to that. If we read between the lines of the title, there are quite a lot of hidden meanings in there. When we say South African Rugby, we say so many things in there. Just to give you an example, before rugby was unified, we had the South African Rugby Board, which was the establishment structure. Then we had the South African Rugby Union, which was the non-racial structure. Then you had the South African Rugby Board, which represented the African community in South Africa. Then you also had the South African Rugby Federation. So just by having the title as South African Rugby, it forces you to think about the complexity of rugby, our history, and it forces us to go deeper, to apply our minds to where we are today, here as Saru legends, but also as members of society. The other term is untold stories. And immediately the question came up in my mind, why are they still untold? It demands a critical look at what is happening. Where are the stories of the Julian Smiths, of the Themba Ludwabas, the Wilfred Kovus? Any of you know who Wilfred Kovu was? He was a former captain of Kwaru. Ibrahim Rinquest. If you read through Sadiq Crombie's book, there were names that I encountered that I have to confess I didn't even know about. And that is indictment against me. But more than that, it's also indictment against our society, and I will allude to that a little bit more later. Yusuf Davids, Jimmy Moses, legends of the game in South Africa. Why are their stories still untold? Those are questions we have to mull over in our head. And then, of course, divided nation. And I don't even need to elaborate on that. Our country, our people are divided along so many lines. And I have mentioned some of that when I refer to the history of South African rugby. So today we gather here not merely to reminisce, but we are here to recognize, to affirm, and to restore the rightful prominence. A generation of rugbymen whose contributions were forged under conditions of exclusion, pre-1994, going back decades. under resistance and unwavering principle. That is what SARU, the SARU that I became part of, where my mentors, the Sas Baileys and the Ibrahim Patels, that they told me what SARU was about and why we have to persevere and stay in SARU. You, the legends of SARU, you represented the movement that stood firm when justice was inconvenient. When we asked for justice, not now, later, and equality was treated as a threat. Why can't, at one stage, I recall in Kimberley when the SARU team was playing there against a regional team, and we sat the Saturday morning in one of the rooms, and Mr. Patel was sitting amongst us. I remember Kaya Jack asked, when unity comes, what's going to happen to Newlands and Athlone Stadium? And Mr. Patel said, Newlands and Loftus are going to become practice fields. And look at the reality today. But more about that a little bit later. But I still want to reflect on the unique contribution of SARU Rugby, the non-racial entity that we represented. In 1992, the unification of rugby did not happen in a vacuum. It was earned through decades of sacrifices by players such as you, by administrators, by coaches, by communities who chose principle over privilege. And more often than not, we need to be reminded of this. Why were we in SARU? Why was SARU in SACOS? Why weren't we with the South African Rugby Board? It is because we chose principle over privilege. SARU Rugby was not simply an alternative structure. It was a moral countervision to what we saw, what was wrong in our country. It insisted, SARU insisted that rugby belonged to all. And the program director alluded to it, that excellence was not the preserve of one race, and that dignity could survive even in the harshest sporting and political conditions. You played without Springbok blazers, without television contracts, without financial security. Yet you carried something far greater, legitimacy. And even today, when we sit and we argue and we debate, that is one point where our argument cannot be faulted on. The legitimate, the moral high ground at the time was against the oppressive system, and that is where we were. But there was a cost attached to that sacrifice. Unity in 1992 did not mean or translate into equality. Integration did not automatically mean justice. And I know amongst us here, there are diverse views for the history of South Africa. The history of rugby is a complex one. And we differ sometimes on the approach, the methodology that we must follow to forge integration, to build on unity. And that will never change. But Sadiq reminds us in his book, we must still continue to ask the difficult questions. Are we truly non-racial? Or were we merely assimilated into a stronger structure? And many of us would say, the evidence is out there. Where are our emblems of the Premier SARU? Where are our stadiums are second or third level? So were we merely assimilated, or are we truly non-racial? Sadiq also asked the question, has the rugby economy been opened or simply rebranded? I can tell you, I know a lot of small sport entrepreneurs, black, colored entrepreneurs who can't get a look in, who wants to bring poor people to the test matches in Johannesburg, in Cape Town, who wants to purchase 100 tickets from SARU so that they can package it in an affordable manner for the lower income groups to attend these games. But it is not afforded to them. They have to get 50 of their friends to go on the internet and put in an attempt to acquire 100 tickets so they can put affordable packages together to take our people to these test matches. A simple thing to open up the rugby economy for the smaller player. And why? Sadiq also asked in his book, even today are the stories of Saru often forgotten and seldom narrated. The program director also referred to that. When we celebrate 100 years of Springbok rugby, we must ask, where are the 140 years of black rugby? And the history is rich. And in the book, it is depicted. Since 1886, our people have been playing rugby, top-class rugby. Who decides which histories are televised, published, and honored? That is the question that we must ask us by looking with a critical eye at what is transpiring right before our eyes. When a few hundred Afrikaner people run away to America and are declared political, I don't even know what you call it. And then within a month, producers and film crews are sent over to make documentaries without any question. But not one documentary has been made about the history of black rugby in South Africa, properly funded, properly researched, nothing. When we ask for that, we are told, go get sponsors, then we'll reconsider it. Those are the realities that you have to deal with. I'm going to take a few more minutes just to look at some of the media and the marginalization challenges that we face as the non-racial grouping in South Africa. One of the most pervasive challenges we continue to face is the deliberate marginalization of non-racial black rugby history. This marginalization is not accidental. It is systemic. It is seen every day when we open up the newspapers, when we turn on or switch on our television screens, whose names are repeated and whose names are omitted. Which legends are mythologized and which are rendered invisible. Which struggles are framed as heroic and which are quietly erased. This erasure undermines the legacy of the non-racial sport movement of which Saru, non-racial Saru, up to 1992 was the staunch principal custodian. When we hear endless debates about the best Springboks of all time, we must ask, where are the Julian Smiths, the Kasim Jabbars, the Themba Ludwabas, the Desmond Kramers? We only see lists of 100 Springboks. These gentlemen are not even mentioned. And that is how equality and unification has bettered our legacy and our history. Sadiq also points out some of the current constraints and ongoing challenges that we face. While we rightly celebrate our 4 World Cup victories, we must always continue to confront the uncomfortable truths. In order to prevail the peace, we sometimes shy away from asking those questions. There's I will not name the name, but my wife will know. There is one of our family members that always say, kom ons hou tog maar net die vrede. Nee, moenie onnodige goed praat nie. Let's just keep the peace. Well, unity and the fact that we are one united structure does not absolve us from questioning what is currently our reality. A closed rugby economy that continues to exclude black entrepreneurs. We must question that. We must challenge that at the AGMs of Western Province Rugby Union, of the South African Rugby Union. The president of SARU was invited to this gathering. He is a product of non-racial SARU. What a great gathering is this. Sadly, he's not here. To those occasions, we must ask, how are you going to open up the closed rugby economy for small entrepreneurs? We must confront the leadership deficits that we see that is driven by opportunism rather than accountability. We hear and see that all the time. The ongoing neglect of community-based and amateur rugby. We have a club competition, and certain clubs have lured players with big packages under the banner of an amateur club competition. It is a disgrace. And we call it the amateur club competition, but it is not. A development pipeline, and this is important, that still extracts talent from poor communities without reinvesting meaningfully in them. Our heroes that we see parading the stages at Parel Gymnasium, Paul Boys, they come from oorkant die rivier. They come from the poor schools. They are highly talented, but they are poached and then paraded as from Parel Gymnasium of Garsfontein Hoërskool, while they from Glen William and from Malmesbury. Are we non-racial? If we are honest, we are still far from that. I'm about to conclude, Mr. Program Director. So the way forward, and I will continue to paraphrase what Sadiq is saying, because this book is important. It captures the gist of what we talk about all the time, what we lament. And I promised my wife I'm not going to make this a set of lamentations today, but just to highlight some of the things that we still struggle with. This book challenges us not to dwell in bitterness, but to act with clarity. And the program director mentioned it. You know, at some point we have to say, what are we going to do? And we must act with clarity. The way forward demands an honest acknowledgement of the past injustices. When they say an alcoholic must first acknowledge that he's an alcoholic before he can be helped. So SARU must first acknowledge that they are delinquent before they will be able to address. And let me hasten to say, I'm not branding the South African Rugby Union as a delinquent organization. I'm pointing out some of the issues that we all talk about but don't act on. Accountable leadership rooted in black communities. Who are representing us at the table? Those are critical questions that we must ask and try to answer it with clarity. Are they representing what we want, what we would like to see? We would like to see a government that understands sport as a social good, not merely a branding exercise. Give $1 million here, give 500,000 rand there, but the fundamental structure of sport, of rugby, remains the same. The same people benefit, the same people are in charge, the same people do business with SARU. You can go check. The millions flow one way. So yes, we may differ on our views on politics, and I've been critiqued quite a lot. 2 weeks ago, I was on a weekend holiday at one of my friend's 60th birthday, and we were on a taxi trip in the mountains, and I wouldn't say vehemently, but I was verbally attacked for a few years ago when we were trying to unity in rugby, accepting the Springbok blazer for that purpose. So we want to force unity. I think that was quite some time back. I only wore the blazer once, and it was at my friend's function. But I was told in no uncertain terms, gee dit terug, gee dit terug, gee dit terug. Sy het uitverkoop. So we have diverse views. We take diverse actions. But we must always remember, it is a very complex situation that we find ourselves in. But we, as the representatives of the non-racial SARU, we knew the values that we stood for, and we knew what we did back then and what we require. So we agree on one thing, even though we differ politically, we differ on the methods and the actions that we're supposed to take. We agree on one thing: opportunity must be spread wider and access must be made real. Let's check. My former teacher will tackle me from the side. So, finally, I think on a positive note, we must reclaim our share of the present. Even though we see all these gaps, these vacuums and challenges, and we wake up one day confident, the next day we are dejected. We must reclaim our share of the present. We must know. And again, the program director referred to that. When Cheslin Kobe sidestep defenders, when Kurtley Arendse accelerates into space, when Makazole Mapimpi finishes in the corner, we celebrate with pride. Why? Because they come from us. They are us. When they win, we win. We have to identify. We have to grab it as ours. Otherwise, it will forever remain theirs. When I mean theirs, you know who I refer to. By celebration alone is not enough. So after we've cheered them on and we've claimed them as ours, recognition, ownership, and structural change must follow. I think my minute is up, and I've got no more pages left. But I once again just want to thank Mr. Sadiq Krombi and the organizers. I know Mr. Bolighaniv's voice was in the background, and I always forget Arab's real name. But Najar, he was also shouting in the background, yeah, hy moet kom man, hy moet kom. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and all the best with the rest of the event. Thank you.
Gary deserves another round of applause. Come on. Gary is a true Saru legend. And I just want to, just leverage off what he has said, that 1992, we had unification. And I often think, did we go into that unification with our eyes closed? Did we go into that unification unstrategically? Were we appropriated? Were we assimilated? Were we co-opted? What exactly is that? And Gary has just said to us now, who represents us at the table? And I'm of the opinion that if those people that represent us cannot move the narrative, cannot change the narrative, then we have to hold them to account and, if need be, remove them. As was 1966, was another inflection point in our history. When we formed, or when the non-racial SARU was formed in 1966, that was an inflection point. How do we think about using sport as one of those tools to redress the iniquities in our society? But yes, Gary, you've taken some latitude here, and the latitude and that which you owe me, put some extra into the rugby to redress all the challenges, hopefully. Allow me to introduce the man of the moment, an educator, a lecturer, trainer, mentor, coach, administrator, consultant, facilitator, and now the author of an erudite book on South African rugby, Untold Stories from a Divided Nation. Just very briefly, he was a secondary school teacher. He lectured um, at IMM Graduate School of Marketing. He also lectured at Peninsula Technikon before it became a university, and then also at the aquaculture department at the University of Stellenbosch. He's worked as a business consultant, practitioner at both Greenhouse and Shanduka Black Umbrellas. He trained teachers in human resource development, school governing boards. He has trained, served as director and trustee at Boerland Training College, Berzig Training College, and Elgin Learning Foundation. I've discovered that he was instrumental in the establishment of the BRT, which is the Bus Rapid Transit System. He has trained, coached, and mentored in employment equity, fishing rights, coastal management programs, integrated development plans, affirmative procurement, black economic empowerment, taxi dispute, and so on and so on and so on. All of this is done throughout South Africa, including Namibia, Mozambique, Egypt, Algeria, and even Russia. So I don't know if he knows Putin, but he's been there. He's a prolific, constant contributor of articles to newspapers and has accredited publications on IDPs, RDPs, Black economic empowerment, and human resource management. He holds a BA in industrial psychology and sociology, a higher diploma in education, and a master's degree in public administration. He has previously published a book, My Apartheid Diary, and now, who shall deny him his eloquently written and erudite masterpiece? And Gary will agree with that. South African Rugby, Untold Stories from a Divided Nation. I call upon Sadiq Krombi.
Shukran. When you are vertically challenged and you're in the company of tall people and you have to lower the mic, and even when you have somebody that sets the bar very high like Gary has just done, it even makes it that much more pressure on one. Mr. Program Director, legends, South African rugby legends, sitting here in front of me, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to address you here today on my book. Now, I cannot, for the love of me, I just said to myself, now what do I have to talk about after Gary's, magnificent speech? But nevertheless, I'm going to try, so just bear with me. Firstly, I never envisaged that the book would be launched in this fashion. But here we are. And obviously, I'm extremely happy. Although this is my second book, it is the first time that I launched, as the previous time I did not have the opportunity because it was during the time of COVID. But nevertheless, after some great support from the District 6 Museum, I could sell close to 800 copies, which was to myself also a major surprise. But talking about Saru, Untold Stories of a Divided Nation, this book has taken me on many new dimensions, new challenges, new directions, new learnings, and new experiences. It helped me to acquire more in-depth knowledge about many individuals who I've only fleetingly known, others more closely. The book took close to 6 years to evolve as it is in the current form, and eventually come to fruition. I do not want to run ahead and tell you everything about the content, but I will try to give you a short synopsis of it. Firstly, there were many challenges. Obviously, resource availability was one of the major challenges. You know, when you write a topic such as this, which to some people are very sensitive, I think you can understand what the thinking is there. So it was financial, it was human, and otherwise. These were some of the notable challenges which I had. Some of the people who were interviewed for the book were in their twilight years, and their memories were not so clear, which is a given. So the memories were not so clear and lucid. Names of venues, teammates, and opponents escaped them. As they say, time and tide wait for no man. Several people who were approached, and I'm going to try to be diplomatic here, but what the heck, they refused. Others gave one the runaround, tried numerous times, and even calling in the help of some of their erstwhile colleagues and teammates. It did not cut any ice with them. They still gave us the runaround. So today, when you open the book, you must ask, but where's this one? Where's A? Where's B? Where's C? I think there's a disclaimer up front to give you an indication of that. Some invited former players were not talkers, as they described themselves. Ek is mos nie 'n prater, man. So you had to basically sit them down, talk to them like you're talking to them, but meanwhile taking all the information they're telling you without them knowing they are being interviewed. So you had to use some unorthodox techniques to get the information out of them. Another challenge was the appropriate support, which I think Gary and the program director alluded to, which one had hoped for from some notable quarters, but it was not forthcoming. Either no response or simply diplomatically told off. Nevertheless, one sometimes just must bite the bullet and voila, come out the other side. This is not a complaint session, but it remains a lived reality for us who come from the other side of the fence. We on the other side of the establishment media have to take cognizance of when we aspire to write, because these are some of the challenges. Now, I'd like to delve a little bit into the book just to give you a synopsis of what that entails. But obviously, I still want you to buy the book. So if I give you too much now, you might say, nah, it's not for me. But here goes. South Africa is a greatly admired country across the globe for its peaceful transition from its former discriminatory policy of apartheid to a democratic order. The country today is feted around the globe as a model of how a country can be welcomed back into the fold of the nations of the world after a tumultuous history. This is none more evident than in the sporting arena, where the country quickly made its mark in different sporting codes, from which it was formerly barred due to the policies of the country's former political dispensation. Since its return from isolation to the international sporting arena, the country has been crowned world champions in rugby 4 times, and it currently holds the coveted international title of Rugby World Champions and is the envy of many other rugby playing nations. And this would not have been possible but for the unstinting and tireless efforts and sacrifices of many sports stars sitting here today, officials sitting here today, supporters who forfeited their natural talents and skills to fight for a society based on the principles of non-racialism. And the book tells the stories of these rugby sports stars against the background of the previous apartheid political order and its influences on their lives right up to their current position in the new democratic dispensation. But it also reflects on the current state of rugby in South Africa, and it makes a deduction on whether the transition from one political order to another has brought significant benefits for the previously disadvantaged sporting fraternity and its former non-racial sportsmen. The book starts off with sketching the interrelationship which existed and continues to exist between sport and politics in the country. This chapter covers the major sporting influences which existed under the apartheid order and which Gary alluded to, and which continues under the new democratic dispensation. Politics can never be divorced from South African sport. And if somebody tells you that, it's a complete misnomer. A brief historical context of how rugby was organized is encapsulated in chapter 1. But the bulk of the writing in the book narrates the personal stories of 45 former national non-racial rugby stars that were being interviewed, their stories captured and relayed. And I can tell you, this part of the writing has been the most challenging for me because many of the personal stories are moving, emotional, and at times equally distressing. There were times that I said to myself, maybe I should not. If you listen to the trials, the tribulations that people, sometimes we believe we in the urban areas had it bad. But if you look out and you listen to the stories of those in the rural areas, in the farming communities, then you start weeping in your heart that people had to be out of town certain hours. They could only come into town on certain days. After having lived in the CBD of town for many, many decades, being unceremoniously forcibly removed through the group areas. It not only happened in Cape Town, it not only happened in Stellenbosch, it happened in many of our rural towns where you pass the house, you see Granny's house still standing. And there's the one story of the scrum half who was reared by a single mum. He had a brother, and they were unceremoniously dumped 5 kilometers. His mother worked for a white Jewish family. And you could never understand that his mother always used to curse. Die blerrie sleg wit mense, kyk wat hulle aan. She used to walk to work and back every day 5 kilometers to and 5 kilometers back. There was no taxis, no public transport at that time. And when the person tells you that story, you can immediately feel feelings that you believed you had basically put aside many, many decades ago. And these are the stories that have never been brought forward and have never been recorded. At other times, these personal renditions by the interviewees are beautifully articulated for their simplicity, sheer tenacity of the human spirit, and the individual resilience, many devoid of seeking of personal glories. And there was many funny ones as well. Somebody from Southwestern Districts telling me, when they used to come to Cape Town to play a game, they used to book the lorry a month in advance. And there was only this one person who had a truck. And they had to come to Cape Town to play against Western Province at Greenpoint. It was a rickety truck with only half a canopy, broken windows. but they had to trek to Cape Town. Even some people from Worcester at the time, they were dropped off in Cape Town, and the week later they would be picked up again because the person needed the truck for his work. But for the SVD guys that came to Cape Town, the one major challenge which they had was food. How do they get their food for that week when they are away? And they would many times act out of character. Would pass somebody's house, steal 2 or 3 chickens, fry the chickens, and that would be the patkos for that week. And the players that sits here also knows that when they used to play out of town, Eastern Province, wherever outside of Cape Town, they had to stay over at the opponent's houses. They would be housed there. So 2 of them would go and they would stay with certain host families in those towns. This one is not in the book, but I think I should relate it to you. So these 2 players, they went to the one house, and at the evening when the dinner was served, the host was sitting there and he was talking to the host on this side, and his colleague was sitting on that side. And he had to manage the colleague. And when they sat at the table having dinner, his colleague always used to eat with a spoon at home. And here, all of a sudden, he was served with a knife and a fork. And he could see this was a major challenge for my colleague. But luckily, from the side of his eyes, you could see him. And as he was talking to the host, he saw his colleague was grappling with the knife and the fork. And you know what a potato is like, slippery. And as he started to cut the potato, it jumped out of his plate onto the floor and under the table. And the colleague was now big-eyed saying to him, what do I do now? So he was talking to the man, but he was looking at the colleague, and he shook his head, leave it. But as he was the colleague, he was sliding under the table, putting out his foot and trying to throw in the potato. And the woman came in and said, is there something wrong? And he came from under the table again. He says, no, there's nothing wrong. That one is not in the book. But once again, the book becomes a journey for the reader. And it narrates the lived experiences of those who lived during those times up to the present day. It also is a narration for upcoming generations to appreciate the privileges they currently enjoy, and which came at a great cost to those who have gone before. And as my 2 previous colleagues alluded, when they see the current South African sporting greats of Cheslin Colby, Brian Abana, Sia Kolisi, Akana Sambini, Kagiso Rabada, and many others gracing the television screens and the world sporting stage, they should realize that this came at a great expense and cost to thousands of others who were denied these same opportunities because of politics and because the color of their skin was of a darker hue. Many may not know who Sali Fredericks, Kasim Jabbar, Piet van Wyk, Dean Mouton, Themba Lutwaba, Papua Sugulam, Hassan Hauer, and many others were. But they should realize that the privileges and benefits that are being reaped today came on the backs and shoulders of these sporting giants. I painstakingly and laboriously created a book which tries to convey their lived experiences and stories. So why write a book, you might ask, of this nature? After all, we are in a dispensation with the refrain, stronger together, and we are 4 times world rugby champions. And I think to answer that question, I will quote Adnan Mohammed, who wrote on the athlete, this is rugby written from the blind side of apartheid. Crombie peels back the green and gold jersey to reveal the bruises beneath the unseen tackles absorbed by 45 former non-racial rugby players who chose principles over podiums, conscience over caps. And therein lies the rub. Personal sacrifices, trials and tribulations of heroic contributions go unrecorded by those who did the most, becoming a footnote of history in this country's road to democracy. And did I have a choice when I sit in front of a television screen and listen and read about the contributions of those who did not bring us to this point, but whose history is continuously punted, narrated, and written about and archived? This is the tragedy of modern day South Africa, when those who did the most are seldom heard, while those who did little remain the prevailing narrative. And that is why I wrote the book. I thank you.
And those sacrifices, Sadiq, that is made by our legends, therein lies the hope. And I believe that, you were spot on here. And I believe that the challenges you faced with our own legends in terms of writing this book and only getting to 45 of the legends and many of them refusing. And I know we come from different religions. We come from different languages. We come from different cultures. But I do believe deeply that we are one human race. And I believe that we have the basic same human values. And we should stop. Stop. We are the collective marginalized, and we should stop dividing ourselves and compromising one another. So well done, Sadiq. Beautiful presentation. And now we get to the posthumous presentation. That will be the legends that have passed on. And we're going to ask their families to come, and as I call out their names, to come up. And if we can do that swiftly and as quick as possible. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge Dean Mouton. And I think he's accompanied by his daughter
Son is also.
and his son. Is it Angela or Adele? Odette. Odette, sorry. I knew it was a similar name. But Dean, we're happy to see you, albeit in the wheelchair. And that just shows your determination to be part of this momentum, to be part of our history. And we're so happy to have you here. I also see Riyad Najjar sitting at the back. And Riyad, it's great to have you here. Riyad is also known as Hare, with no Hare today. Uh, Riyad, before I carry on, I just want to make a comment. You have for years told me that I've got the record for the most tries scored in a club game. 7 tries for Primroses against Westridge. And all the moves on the day was made with me being the central figure. But sorry, Riyad, I've just discovered reading Sadiq's book that there is a gentleman, Delacour. What's his name? Andre Lacordia, who played for Roslins, and he scored 8 tries in a first team club game. So you lauding me always for the most tries? Stop doing that. Lacordia should get the honors and be lauded. Now, the recipients on behalf of the deceased legends in the book, Ismail Fatih Bohardin, and to accept the book now will be Fatima Bohardin, the daughter of Fatih Bohardin.
That is double factor, no? Ruby, Ruby,
Let me just say that the book is symbolic of a trophy. It's a trophy with text. And I believe it's a sought after piece. And we want you to come up briskly and quickly to get the book. And whoever is representing the next person, please come forward. The second deceased legend is Ibrahim Brema Rinquest. And to collect the book is Bobby Rinquest. Come on, guys, some better applause. The deceased legend, Piet van Wyk, and his dear friend, Edmund Geduld, will collect. Sally Fredericks, the legend, collected by Lukman and Ilham Fredericks. Nellis Sidwell Duplessis, that will be collected by his nephew, Wendell Daris. The legend, Desmond Kramer, acceptance by Desmond Boyson, his close friend. And we all know William Balacroy. Inge and Adele Croy, please come accept. The legend, Nazim Taufi. The acceptance by Tarzan Aslam Taufi. Can I go into the next? So we're going to do a collective photo of this group, the representatives of the deceased legends. Aslam. Wasila Buadin and Yazid Bohadin. Guys, this is a somber moment. Give them a round of applause. Gary and Sas Bailey, I want to say the following. There are many, many players that were on the brink of being selected for national colors. And it's sometimes just where you find yourself. On a good day, on a good day, you get the selector's eye, or on a good day, you perform. But I'll tell you, I played with Clive Thomas at Tygerberg. I played with Saeed Majid at Cities. And I played with Rushdie Majid at Cities. And Rushdie Majid was exactly what Sally Fredericks was to Western Province, he was to City and Suburban. And these people, in my mind, undoubtedly, and alongside my dear friend Hardy Dolly, you know, he defied the myth of being big to play rugby. Like Jean-Pierre Reeves defied the myth that you have to be big to play rugby. So I would say any day that Clive Thomas, Saeed Majid, Rushdie Majid, and Hardy Dolly should have had national colours. It's just on the day they didn't get the selector's eye. I was privy to one province match against Somerset, and Basil Lowe, the front row, Aubrey Manus, Danny Prince, outscrummed Western Province on that particular day, with the great Matthew Napoleon and I think Yusuf Lowe and Kasim Diedrichs being there. Totally outscrummed. Of course, Western Province won the game, but they didn't get the selector's eye. Any one of them could have been Springboks today. Okay. Let me carry on with my program before I get carried away. The legends of the 60s. Martinez, David, Dean, Mouton. Odette, are you going to push him up, or are you coming to collect the award? Please push him up. Can we get somebody to help her? Can we get somebody to help her? And now, Kasim Kat Jabbar. Edgar Wolf Salier. Please come up. Please come up. Yusuf Tat Davids. Blachong, will you remain on stage for the legend Danny Adams? Michael Ike Mitchell. At one stage, Ike Mitchell and myself and Saeed Majid was the loose trio of City and Suburban. And we scored many, many tries playing together. I remember one match against Western Province Board, I scored a hat-trick, but all of Ike Mitchell. Give him a hand, man. One of my loose trio heroes, Randy Marinas, Ismail Badroun. Just as a matter of interest, 1977 on City Park, I still have scars of Ismail Badroun. Give him a hand. Daniel Spooky September. Desmond Boyson. Ismail Brother Khan. Another one of my favorites, James Jimmy Moses. Jocelyn Ontong, can you come up? Yusuf Joa Abrams. Temba James Ludwaba. Matthew John Gibber Davids. And of course, Charles Kleinboy from the Eastern Cape. Can we do that photo? Can we do that photo? Come on, guys, spur them on. Guys, I didn't mention somebody that I also believe should have been a Springbok. And first, he used to play in City and Suburban as Hamlet Karelse, and then later in the Western Province as Ibrahim Karelse. He's sitting right in front of me. Undoubtedly one of the best wings I've seen. Give him a hand. Come on. What's his Springbok? What's his Springbok? What are you whispering? What are you whispering? No, sorry. Sorry. This, I just want to correct something. Ibrahim Karelse was a Springbok. Sorry, guys. He was a Springbok. I didn't see his name in the book and I misread it. Okay. Sorry, Ibrahim. And now all the legends just before unification. Ronnie Victor Corky. Yeah, but now Ibrahim Khan, you got him twice. You got Ibrahim Khan twice. I'm just going to delete him.
Yeah, no. But he can come up, but he won't get another one. But he played it.
Okay. Ismail Brother Khan, you, you can come up again, but you're not getting another book, okay? Give him a round of applause. Peter Lawrence, Ibrahim Kang Solomons, Nazim Murat, Gary Bossoff, another one of my favorite players, Ibrahim Boli Khanif, Khalili Arnold, Faik Blachang Hendricks, Irvin October, Aslam Tofi, Jocelyn Ontong, Ibrahim Falyoun, Riyad Najjar, Johan de Koker, Bull, Grantham Johnson, Mervyn Samuels, Fred GT Amsterdam, I'll mention the names, but they're not going to be present. Peter Slobbert, Zola Yeye, Gabriel Noble, and Fahmi Solomons. Give them a round of applause. Quizás. The author says he's got broad shoulders. He's going to handle the questions. Gary, I was going to call you up as well, but okay. Let's see where we go. Guys, do we have some roving mics around here? Sadiq? Is there a roving mic going? If you have a question, there's a mic, call for a mic, and pose your question. Alternatively, if you don't want to do it over the mic, send me a note and I will pose the question to the author. But I'm going to get started while we're waiting, Sadiq. Is that okay? Question one. What was the original catalyst or driving force that compelled you to dedicate several years documenting these specific untold stories of non-racial rugby? Okay, you can stay.
Yeah, but let me grab this.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I expected that one. So I've prepared somewhat, a little bit of it. I think the major driving force was when I noticed the absence of writing, which focused on the true stories and history of those who contributed so much to non-racialism in this country. The literature or research in this respect was sparse, or the stories are never told. Even tertiary and other institutions of higher learning made little concerted effort to research such contributions relating to non-racial sports. And after more than 2 decades into the new democracy, very little of the sacrifices, trials, and tribulations of people who suffered the most under oppression and apartheid in sport, and rugby in particular, were not related at all. If it was recorded or archived, it was sparse, devoid of the true contributions, and regarded as a footnote of South African history. And I think this motivated me to write.
Thank you. Thank you. Give him a round of applause. Are there any questions from the floor yet? Not yet. Sadiq. Yes. Yes, you may. Have you got a mic?
I'm Dr. Hilda Wemba. I'm the brother of William Croy. Thank you very much for
Anna
having.
Kroy.
Yes. I come from an esteemed rugby family. 4 out of the 5 brothers were outstanding rugby
Wow.
players. Only William Balla was presented with the Springbok players. I think it was 2016.
Yeah.
But my comment is, where are the media today? Why aren't the media invited? We complain and we keep on complaining that it's only the whites or on the other side of the line that people are being exposed. Not once was an interview done of my brother before or after his death, or my other 3 brothers, and my phenomenal Pawata cousins. At least in their memory, my aunt, who was my dad's elder sister, there's a stadium in Bellville South that was named after her. But it's never on TV. It's never presented for the world to see. And who's to blame? Us. Why didn't you contact SuperSport to say we are doing this today for our people, to commemorate our people? Where's SuperSport? Where's the rest of the rugby media? There is 110 more programs on TV. Ask me now that I'm retired from the university. I watch every single sporting activity because I have time to do that. But those people ensure that when things like this happen or major events like this happen, that there is coverage. Yes, absolutely no coverage. it's going to end right here and we're back to normal. And tomorrow in the next event, we're all going to complain again. But we are just to blame ourselves.
Okay.
That's all I want to say.
Okay. Thanks, Doc. Sadiq, do you want to answer that? I think you've made efforts to get the media here. Can you just explain?
Yes, thank you for that point. I think that was more a question than anything else and a comment, but nevertheless, thank you, Doctor. And your brother was one of the first that I actually interviewed. It was not through the deliberate attempt not to have the media here. But as I said in my speech, you expect from certain quarters assistance approaching them. I approached ETV hoping that maybe, just maybe, they will rock up. And I actually approached one of the presenters who's a regular on television. And unfortunately, they're not here. So it is not through a lack of trying. They are just not interested. And also, as the guest speaker Gary alluded, um, invites went to Western Province, invites went to South African Rugby Union, and you can see they are not here today. So you can deduce from that why not. I hope that answers the question.
Any questions from the floor? Sharif, give him the mic, please. Yeah.
Just hold up your hand, Sarif. He just wants to know where you're sitting.
Reverend Victor Jones. I've come from the football fraternity. Skip a second for your eyes. Just a reflection of the rugby is excellent since 1994 compared to the soccer in the Western Cape. What were the elements of success of rugby and how would you describe the progress of rugby compared to the soccer? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Reverend Jones. Reverend Jones is somebody I came to know a few years ago. He's from Mitchell's Plain. And when I did some work for the taxi industry, our paths crossed through Nazim Abdurrahman. And he's always somebody that's inquiring how things are on my side. Yes, I think one of the most notable successes, Reverend Jones, is the fact that rugby actually inculcated certain values, rather entrenched the non-racial values in our communities. It also solidified our communities in ensuring that we become a potent force against apartheid. And I mean, if you look at how integrated our communities were at the times, yes, on the field, there was a lot of sting when Tygerberg played Western Province. They fought. Let's not hide away from that. But in the end, they all espoused the dictum of no normal sport in an abnormal society. And they clung to that. And you can see how that evolved over time, that people who initially went to Newlands Rugby Stadium completely turned their backs on that. And I think that is one of the most potent advantages that ensured that our rugby became so unified and maybe more so than football or soccer, because I know there were different factions of soccer here in the Western Cape and then up north, etc., but not in rugby. So I think that makes the distinction for me. I hope that answers your question.
Another question, Sharif?
Assalamu alaikum and congratulations, Sadiq, for making this book. I just want to know how long did you take with this book? Because I heard about this book many years ago and it never came. And the second thing is, I photograph. I'm a photographer for a Rapport newspaper. At the moment, they are closed, so I'm around. I photograph most of the SA rugby blacks, colors, where Chester Williams played, Parvat and all that. I photographed all that. So Rapport covered all those things through me. I did all the coverage. I did all the work for the white newspaper to cover all these rugby uh, matches. So I don't think the media was so bad in that sense. But if it wasn't for me, it would have been a big problem because I used to open my mouth with all the boere there. It was a boere company, and there was only about two um, colors, and I was one of them, myself and Yunus Mohammed. And we handled the boere so well. So that's how the soccer and the rugby and the cricket got all in the Rapport newspapers.
Thank you, Mr. Sarif Jaffer, for that question. And thank you also for, sorry, yeah, I know. Thank you again, Mr. Sarif Jaffer, for allowing us to use that photo on the front cover. But just to come back, obviously, it took me about 6 years, but I alluded earlier on to the challenges which I had. Sometimes you have to phone or you have to get in contact with somebody 4, 5, 6 times. And as I also said that many of the people do not have the necessary information immediately available because of old age, etc., etc. So that posed further challenges of that. Okay.
I just have one comment.
Any more questions? Yeah.
Just a comment about the media. This does not further the narrative of the dominant culture of the fourth estate. And so they don't, and Comrade here, he will tell you, we recently had a protest over 2 months and we had some protest over the last 2 months and we consistently tried to get hold of the mass media and they just don't pitch because it didn't further the narrative that they want to further. I think the story of this book is to change the narrative. And so they won't cover this. They'll cover only the stuff that plays into their narrative.
To add to that, Sarif, we were offered by News 24 to cover this. Please carry on with this. This book is going to change the whole South Africa. So don't stop here. I heard this the doctor saying, but we need to work with it. We need to force this. Because we can't wait on them. There's no them. We must do it.
My last question to you, Sadiq, and I perhaps also want to have a little interaction with the audience. So I'm going to throw a curveball to some of the intellectuals here. But my last question to you, do you believe that the racial narrative in rugby moves sufficiently for us to unequivocally support our national team?
I knew somehow that was going to come sometime or other. In another way, it comes, but in a very diplomatic way. Who do you support? I'm a proud South African. I support South Africa to the brim, whether it's the Proteas cricket team, whether it's the athletics, etc. But when it comes to rugby and the emblem, I think there's some noise at the back. When it comes to rugby, the Springbok emblem has got certain intrinsic principles attached to it that basically put us still where we are embedded today. Why, oh, why did we then have to use the Springbok emblem? We might just as well have continued using the full stem. or the full old national flag, the national party flag as our flag? Why? What makes rugby and the Springbok so different? Why can't they be part of South Africa and be Proteas as well? And that is the one hurdle that I cannot cross, and ensures that there is still this intrinsic apartheid narrative.
Okay, I want us to pass the mic to either Gary or Sas. Sadiq has mentioned the symbolic meaning of the Springbok badge. What does the Springbok symbol? What does the Springbok symbol mean to rugby players? Has its previous symbolic meaning become immaterial because no one, absolutely no one, can dispute that rugby talent crosses all demographics equally? Must I repeat? I repeat. What does the Springbok symbol mean to rugby players? Has its previous symbolic meaning become immaterial because no one, absolutely no one, can dispute that rugby talent crosses all demographics equally? Either one of the two of you, Gary, or you or Sus?
Food banks becoming disrespectful.
Okay. Before anybody gets to the food stations, let us first complete this question time and have the closure before we start eating, okay? Over to you, Sus.
Sharif, Sadiq, Sas Bailey to the gathering, also former General Secretary of SARU at that time, and but around in rugby for the last 40, 50 years. So don't worry, I know something of rugby. There is a curveball, and it's a dangerous place to try and answer that. But it's maybe also an opportune time to directly answer that. Because I think, and what Sharif has said earlier, Sharif, is that I think one of the things that is omitted in our midst is there somehow the lamentation is one thing, but to take true ownership of rugby, that is lucky lacking. That we as former SARU can point where we say that South African rugby belongs to all of us. And we hold whoever is up there accountable because we are South African rugby. And for one or other reason, we just refuse to do that. And as long as we refuse to do that, and we have an attitude of they and us, so long will we sit with this problem. I mean, currently, if you look at the leadership of SARU, what prevents us, this esteemed gathering, to take a delegation or to do whatever, to approach the leadership of SARU and directly address some of these issues that are for concern? So that is the one thing. And about the significance of the Springbok and how relevant it is. Yeah, we may have our own opinions, but also let us not be in denial. Look at the stands currently, whether we like it or not. Look at the rugby stadium. Look who's there. Look who's cheering the Springbok. We're slowly becoming the majority supporters of rugby. We must ask ourselves those questions, and the very people who can claim, and our comrades, that they were at the lowest level of the receiving end, they are currently some of the most passionate supporters of the Springbok because they take ownership of everything in the country. And they also know that in the end, their numbers, and when I say there, that the numbers that the majority of the people have will eventually contribute that slowly but surely our numbers will in the end also be represented on the rugby fields. So that is the one aspect. Then the Springbok emblem itself. There's also a big misnomer. As I said, I'm going to stick my neck far out and very long because I was part of that process. And there's never a day that I will be ashamed or afraid to say I was part of it. Because most of you sitting here, if you know anything of Saru rugby, if you know anything of rugby, if you know anything of the sporting struggle and the broad democratic struggle that happened up in the 80s, will know what has transpired. And you also know how eventually even the sporting bodies became involved in this, and how eventually we had all these entourages going out of the country to meet with the ANC in exile and whatever, until the day that we got to a position where we could come back and officially engage with the regime and also with the rugby board, the blessings of the ANC in exile. Whether we like it or not, they were the Progressive Party or the Liberatory Movement in exile. And through a long process, a democratic process of SARU within the SARU fold. And we had representation from the club. You asked the question, are the right people today leading the clubs, the provinces, national? Because we had to report back even right to the lowest level, to the clubs, as to what we take up as mandates. In those days, it was still about mandates. And as Lloyd, it was sometimes to great frustration of an Ibrahim Patel when people come with set mandates, but you had a discussion for a whole morning or an whole afternoon, and they couldn't move away from the mandate, irrespective of what was on the table. So that is just to contextualize what we had when we then moved to a position where we had to, it was agreed that we are going to now unify rugby and also other sports. And as I said, it was with the blessing of SARU, of its members, and also with the ANC in exile. We came to the point after we signed the constitution, the interim constitution for the new body. We had to start thinking of an emblem for the new body. We even at the time referred to the team as the South African national rugby team. Go read properly the history of that. And it was then in the discussions it came out, Saru, you sit with 2 Springbok heads on your logo with a Protea. The Federation had 3 Proteas, Sarah had a leopard, Springbok were there, and the board also had the Springbok, just a jumping one. So we then agreed as an interim emblem, and Danny Craven for that matter, my God, rest his soul, may his soul rest in peace. He was the one, in fact, to push that we just should have that unified emblem for rugby. And we should just hold it. We are not being assimilated into this thing where you just add Saru in the little bottom, because they already had it there. SAP at the top and then Federation and SARU at the bottom. And they just wanted to add SARU in at the top. We said, no, it's a new body that is formed. We never assimilated. It was a proper merger. Whether you like it or not, that is what has happened. And it was then agreed that that interim emblem goes for the administrative side, for the interim, and that for the playing side, for the players, we will have the Springbok jumping across the Proteas, the laurel or whatever you call it of Proteas. Now, there was also development there because some felt then that was the Proteas is now put in a subjective position as to the Springbok, and the Proteas had moved on top, and you then later had this position where this Protea came on top of the Springbok. And that was then in the end agreed that that is the emblem for the South African Rugby Union, the new one, South African Rugby Football Union. That is really the emblem of the new body.
Yeah.
And even the blazers that you receive. There's a lot of debates about the blazers and burn it out. Whoever wish to burn that jersey, that blazer, be my guest. But it is the blazer that was given as part of this drive to give recognition to all of us who couldn't, through apartheid, rightfully and equally, compete for this for the top national honors or colors. We said, we show to you out of respect, you belong to the new body.
Sas, I think you've given us good clarification.
Yeah.
Give him a round of applause.
Thank you. So that
Thanks,
is relevant.
thanks, thanks.
Thank you.
I think, Sas, what you're really saying is that beyond the symbol, we've got to claim the symbol. We've got to claim the spaces. And as Gary said earlier on, it is who represents us on those structures and who is able to change the governing narrative that is more important. So strategically going forward, it is about us having an indaba and ensuring that we give all administrators in structures the right brief, the right mandate, so that we can absolutely change the narrative. The symbol, which was inspired by Mandela and so many of the administrators, actually now becomes immaterial. And that was my question. It becomes immaterial because the symbol belongs to us as well. Give him another round. I think we're going to get to the moment now where we're going to ask, are there more questions? Are there more questions? Okay. Ibrahim Karelse, come. I've got a question.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know what to say. But I'm going to tell the people that they can know. I'm not worried about it, City Comrie. I respect you, and I respect you for your book. And I respect you, of course, you know me. Your father, in 1969, I presented South Africa at the age of 18 years of age. I played for cities over 100 games. Now, I want to tell the people that they can know. Seeing that I'm not in the book.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not cut up because I'm in the book, because this is another book that's on the shelf and nobody's going to buy it. And the lady was right. Because people are getting it. From here, we're not going to go anywhere with the book. Die boek gaat op die shelf lê, gaan niemand gaan dit kopie, het gaat nie in die bookshelves wees nie. So this is another book that's going to do is not his work. Now what I want to say, my status is a rugby, because I feel insulted because I'm not in the book, for the simple reason that I played for cities from 67 to 71, for province 7 years on the wing. I scored 13 tries in one tournament in 1961. They can bear me up. I scored a try against province. Wasn't it? Then we would have won that match, but we lost that match, the 13. They won us the 13 men, province. I understand that. I just want to tell, I don't want to speak to you. I don't want to speak to him. I want to speak to the public, that the public can know where I come from. I am cut up, very much cut up, because I feel very insulted also. When I played for cities, this man, Rushdie Majid, was the top lock, and Joa Abrams was the number 8 in province. So I will congratulate you on your book, because you're one of the people that actually, this is the best book that ever came out that I've seen, because he involved everybody, but not me, but it's fine. But everybody's in here. In this book is a picture of a 1969 Springbok team where I'm in the book, and the final of Greek was in 1973 is also in the book. So what does that tell you? Is that Ibrahim Karelse is not a Springbok? But nevertheless, I'm very happy that I spread my feelings to the people that they can know. So
Okay.
my kids was quite
Ibrahim, you are a legend. You are a legend. Give him a round of applause. I'm going to call Sadiq Rombi to give a very, very brief thank you and synopsis of the event. Sadiq.
If I can just have your attention. If I can just have your attention at the back. There is too much noise in the corner, Dr. Iso. Thank you. I realize that the part where the thanking is done is a fleeting moment in a gathering of this nature. However, I wish to request you afford me the few extra minutes to relay my deepest and most sincere gratitude and also the respect to the people that are here. To everyone who has allowed me to finalize and conclude the process which has taken a few years, for without the participation and involvement of many, this finalization would not have transpired. Firstly, the grace and mercies of the Almighty have been the foremost factor in everything that has transpired throughout this whole process. From the initial idea, the crystallization of it, right up to its finalization. The abilities to do what was done, the capacity and capability to see through came from the highest. Shukr and thanks go to Almighty for His blessings. To my family, my late parents who inculcated in us the values of ensuring we utilize whatever skills we have for the greater good. My sisters for their undeniable support and encouragement to continue the task which I have embarked upon. For their assistance, they would not allow me to crow about on such a public platform, but it came in every form in ensuring this book comes into fruition. To Ibrahim Boli Khanif, they say you don't thank any one singular individual, but everyone, no matter how small or inconsequential his or her contribution may have been. For you might just miss someone, and you always will. I know I probably will now. While I wholeheartedly agree with this contention, I will nevertheless veer from that script and must highlight the contribution of Ibrahim Boli Khanif. Ibrahim, I wish to thank you for the unstinting support you have given me the past year. Ibrahim is a perfectionist when it comes to his trade. In this sector in which he practices his trade, it is a hallmark of a true craftsman. Whenever I or Angelo viewed a photo or picture and exclaims its absolute beauty and exquisiteness, he would come back a day or two later to highlight the picture's quality, the pixels, the technical absence, and its true value. And he would be right every time, all the time. To me, the novice on this was a new terrain, but to him it was the creation of a product which would incorporate quality and the intrinsic hallmarks of excellence. Being in his company, one starts to become increasingly discerning about these aspects and begins to look at things like paper quality, margins, formatting, typesetting, sizing, etc., with a new sense of viewing it and adopting a critical eye. He has his idiosyncrasies, but then a master craftsman has all those qualities which really set them apart from the rest. Sitting and working alongside him has therefore been an eye-opener, a learning process, and the acquiring of a discerning skill which might not have existed before. I can truly and honestly declare that the book would not ever have been of such a quality had Ibrahim's support and involvement not been present. I also want to thank his wife, Mariam, for allowing me to work at their house in Grassy Park from time to time in finalizing the book. Shukran Ibrahim and the family. To the interviewees in the book, your words to me during the interviews might not have seemed like much at the time, but it was profoundly moving, and I'm honored that my writing has touched some of you in such a deep and personal way. In reading some of the stories to you, I became increasingly and acutely aware of the magnanimity of the task which I have embarked upon. The stories were deeply personal. The emotions which came forth during your interviews and which you described to me oscillate between harrowing tales and emotionally draining ones. On the one hand, to the stories of resilience, dogmatic disinclination to accept your fate as determined by a nefarious political order, and in the end, eventual triumph of the human spirit over adversity. Having been privy to such an emotional roller coaster left me with little other option but to unrelentingly continue to describe your stories. My greatest disillusion is that I could not do more, record even more of your stories, of so many not in the book. You spoke to the strength and truth of your stories, unbeknown to many, with the utmost confidence. The truth was also inside of you, and I simply have to give it a voice. If I, Sadiq, in that moment meant offering you the understanding, presence, and care you decried, becoming the medium and conductor of it, then I'm truly and greatly honored. Your stories and those of so many others sitting here, as well as those who have already left for the afterworld, deserve to be told with the tenderness, honesty, and dignity you carry within you. Thank you for trusting me with something so intimate. I'm humbled and eternally grateful for you in opening that door to me and allowing me inside. The University of the Western Cape, the intellectual home of myself, many of my family, friends, and those whose stories are captured in the book. You have afforded me the platform to do a homecoming of this magnitude. That the traditionally called home of the left, as the university was commonly known, has been the institution that has been instrumental in imbibing the requisite skills, capacities, and abilities in us to demonstrate to the global arena what can be achieved against the greatest of odds. The university, truly a bastion of struggle and institutional enlightenment, was a haven to us, despite the set compliant agenda that apartheid order envisaged for it. Today we are grateful and honored to be in the hallowed halls of the Jakes Gerwel Hall, the man himself, an icon of resistance and academic excellence. Our presence here is to repay the university, its staff, and everyone who made it possible for us to come back, and in so doing, repay the investment which was entrusted upon us. Coming here and choosing the university for this purpose was deliberate, but which could not have happened without your acceptance and approval. I'm therefore deeply honored, truly grateful, and thankful to you for hosting us here today. Thank you, Professor Anis Manirat Singh, Amanda Falanda, and the rest of the UWC community. To Adila and Zainab, the two ladies who equipped themselves impeccably with the task to ensure RSVPs are done. Obviously, RSVP on confirmation is not one of the strongest suites for many of us, and they had their hands full of attendees who did not confirm before the cutoff date. They nevertheless kept calm and ensured the task at hand is done effectively and efficiently. To Angelo Arnser, I came to know him 8 years ago, and since we built up a great understanding and the relationship around rugby and many other issues, we clicked then, and today two of us are still confiding in each other around matters rugby. Angelo is a walking dictionary when it comes to names for players from the Saru non-racial stable, and he has a smart method of ensuring he unearths many names and background. We sometimes just laugh at many of the antics of some of our former players, but in the end, we trust each other implicitly. Thank you, my friend. You are dependable, and I'm grateful to you. To Craig Arendse, the first, my good friend, Mr. Craig Arendse, who I've known since 1990s at the advent of the democracy, worked for two different clients. We basically struck a working relationship and started a practice called mediation and transformation practice. Today's event would not have been possible if not for him. He came, we are still the best of friends. We visit each other often. And when he heard of this event, he had no hesitation in contributing to making it a success and one we can all be proud of. He's a man with a generous heart. I appreciate your greatness of heart sincerely. Mr. Fuad Johnson sitting right up front. Mr. Fuad, can you stand so people can see who you are? In the same vein, another friend, Mr. Fuad Johnson, was introduced into my circle of friends when he started a business in the Strand. Fuad eventually sold on the business but remained in the oil industry. We bumped into each other at a farewell event for a diplomat, and as we spoke, he mentioned of the book came up. As his nature, he said, come to see me when you are in the process of launching. And today, his kind-heartedness has led to making this a reality. Mr. Asraf Arab Jefta, The printing of the book brought some unimaginable challenges. If this man did not come into the equation, I do not believe we would have had the quality of the book we see here today. I do not want to go into all the details other than to say he really pulled us through. We ensure we can celebrate the book in the form we see here today. Shukran Ashraf. We have known each other since our early cricket days, many moons ago. And the finalization of this book become a timeless reality. Shukran Haji. Special mention to Fazlin de Klerk at the front desk, Riyad Najjar, Faik Hendricks, Jocelyn Ontong, Ibrahim Falyoun, Ibrahim Solomons, Angelo Arendse, Ismail Khan, Amanda Verlander, and my 4 young assistants, Tolga and Zubair Williams brothers, Farhad Solomon, Saeed Arnolds, and importantly, our very articulate and erudite program director, Mr. Sarif Abbas, who did an immaculate and sterling job. Mr. Spice Maker himself really graced and managed the event with the aplomb of a seasoned professional. And lastly, to you, the audience, many have traveled from far and wide. Northern Cape, Mr. Dean Mutom, Southern Cape, Mr. Derek Peterson and Company, Eastern Cape, and outlying areas of Cape Town to be here. I cannot truly convey my utmost gratitude to you all for gracing this book launch. I have had many misgivings about hosting an event of such magnitude. Many who have seen the sample products of the book were adamant that they would not expect anything less. Many in my family's close circle of friends, rugby icons, former players, implored me to go this route, and today you sit here in your hundreds honoring me in this way. Your presence is vindication that I have made the right decision. I am truly and deeply humbled. Shukran. Thank you. Enkos. Thank you for your presence. That is my piece.
And I've got absolutely nothing to add further except to say thank you for coming to the book launch. Drive home safely. But before you do that, please enjoy your portion of the buffet. Thank you very much. Continue with the socialization. And if you need your book signed by Sadiq Krombi, please go over to the table in the front. Thank you.